Shabbat Shalom, SVIVAH. So this week's Parshat is Parshat Vayeshev. And before we get into the Parsha, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background from what's been happening and what's leading up to the events of this week's Parsha. So there's Yaakov, Jacob, and he has these 12 sons. And the sons don't all get along so well. And he doesn't treat them all with equal love and attention. So he favors Joseph, and he gives him this coat of many colors, this katona pasim, and the brothers are jealous of him. They notice this unequal distribution of love, and they don't really appreciate it. And then it gets worse because Joseph also tells negative things towards his father, Yaakov, Jacob, about the other brothers. And he also has these two dreams that depict his brothers either as sheaves of wheat or as stars, basically bowing down to him. So there's this very unhealthy relationship between Joseph and his brothers, and it spirals and it keeps getting worse and worse to the point where in this week's Parsha, his brothers actually take him and throw him in this pit where in theory they're leaving him there to die. That's not how the story ends, but that's the place where we find ourselves in this week's Parsha. So he's sitting in this pit, and then when he's in the pit, the next verse after they throw him in, I find really striking, and I want to consider it with you. So in chapter 37, in verse 25, Parak Lamed Zayin, Pasuk Chaf Hey, the verse says, Vayeshvu le'achol lechem, and they sat down to eat bread. And this is what they do the minute after they throw him in the pit, or the very next verse, which seems so shocking, really. I mean, I guess throwing him in the pit wasn't an altogether sensitive, kind thing to do, but afterwards to just be able to like sit down and have your bread, I feel like there's something going on here that needs to be unpacked. And also, why did the Torah decide to include that detail? That seems like an irrelevant detail. The throwing in the pit part, that's really important, but why do we need to know that they then sat down and ate bread? What is to be learned from this? So to unpack this, I want to reflect upon an experience that I had last Saturday night. So last Saturday night we had to go from one city to another, and it was kind of a far drive, and so we were driving in the car and there was a blizzard and the snow was coming down really heavy. And while we were driving, I was sitting in the passenger seat, and I noticed as we were driving the snow seemed to be coming not vertically falling from the sky, but horizontally, like it was coming at us. And as I was sitting there, I was like, wow, this snow really, it almost seems like it's attacking us. Like it's so intense, it's so like straight in our faces, and seemed rather harsh. And I was really kind of struck by that. And then when we finally got to a stopping point and we stopped at a red light, I saw that all of a sudden the snow didn't seem to be attacking us anymore. Suddenly, it was just falling vertically, straight from the sky to the ground. And I realized, of course, right, the reason why the snow had looked like it was coming at us so harshly was because we were driving into it. And we were pushing forward, and it was pushing against us. And once we stopped pushing forward and we took a break, it no longer was coming at us, because really it hadn't been coming at us all along. That was just the perception that came about because of the way that we were acting, because we were driving forward. And I wonder if that's what happens in this pasuk, that once the brothers they stop, they get off the train, they're no longer in this spiraling situation where their relationship with their brother Yosef is snowballing out of control, and jealousy and anger and the dreams and the coat and all of it, and they throw him in the pit, and then they just sit down. And it's the first time that they sat down and took a breath. And once they sat down, everything looked different to them. They were able to reflect and see, maybe the snow wasn't coming at us. Maybe the snow was falling straight down, and we didn't exactly perceive the situation correctly. Because the next words in that same verse, after it says they sat down to eat bread, are Vayesu einehem. They lifted up their eyes. They were able to see something differently, and what they saw was this group of Yishmaelim coming, and they then took Yosef out of the pit and sold him to these men, which is eventually how he gets down to Egypt. Now, the selling him was not a wonderful thing to do either, but it was different and it was better, and it was something that they chose to do because they took a moment, and because of that they took him out of the pit and saved his life. So I feel like this is an invitation for us to think about, do we have moments where we pause, where we sit, where we take a breath, and how do those moments, which might be really hard to find and really hard to come by, especially this time of year. I know things are so crazy for everybody. Me too, I feel it also. Do we find these moments? And when we do find them, are we then able to see whatever situations we're grappling with, whatever situations we're in the middle of, in a different way? Does it shift our perspective? So for the Shabbat, I'm going to leave you with a piece of music and with actually also a meditation. You can use either one or neither or whatever you'd like. And if you can just find some time for yourself to sit down, to either meditate or listen or journal or breathe or whatever feels good for you, just give yourself a few minutes and see how that shifts things. Does it change anything that in your perception? Does it help you see a situation differently? What is your response to having that time, which you may never give yourself on a regular basis, or it may be something that feels very rare. So carve out that time if you can. Use a meditation, listen to some music, do whatever's right for you. And I'd love to hear your reflections, so feel free to share. Wishing you all Shabbat Shalom.